Good afternoon, Mary. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Danielle. How are you?
Very good. We've chatted, my goodness, on and off. I looked back and it was almost a year ago that we've been chatting. So it's really nice to finally connect with you again. And I understand at this point in your career that you are seeking new employment because I originally reached out to you when you were not, when you were not a job seeker, but you were already working somewhere else and we connected. So tell me a little bit about your housing authority experience. I understand that you worked for the Flagler County Housing Authority, and tell me what you did there. What did a day look like?
I was hired as like the admin, so I would be supporting all of the case managers. And then due to the fact that I had some HUD experience, they did ask me to take on the port-ins. So I did some port-ins and, followed up on all the paperwork, making sure recertifications were done, gathering all of the documents for in preparation for the case managers to do recertifications, scheduled the inspections, making sure they all got done on time, and obviously a lot of communication. And I also managed their wait list. So I
Okay.
wasn't alone in that. There were three of us that did that, but I was the main communication person to make sure that people that were applying for the wait list got what they needed, made sure that they provided the documentation to secure their place on the wait list or be considered. So
Okay. And what type of skills do you think that you possess that would make you a good candidate for that type of role that you actually worked in? What made you successful?
well, what attracts me to go back to that type of a position is the fact that I, I think the fact that I feel more like a mentor in that position, somebody that can, I don't like to just put a piece of paper in front of someone and ask them to just complete it. I'd like to be able to explain to them why they're completing it. And I think that builds trust. I think that in the environment where people have a little bit less trust because the demographic that I worked in when I was working with HUD was a little bit different than when I Concord. So it allowed people to see that I was willing to be more open to a conversation and not just a paper pusher. So that part
Okay.
of it I think is very good. And the fact that I'm resourceful and I add value. So it's not just about them doing the paperwork, it's about offering them assistance and finding out if there's other things that might be able to further assist them.
Okay. And then tell me about your property management experience.
So I started as leasing in 2014. And I
Mhm.
worked my way up to assistant community director with Concord. So that's when I started, when I moved down here. And so I've got a little over 9 years of experience in property management, going from leasing right up to property manager. And obviously, the property management experience comes between the LIHTC and tax credit to the HUD environment to also supporting and working on the housing authority side of it. So I've seen both sides of that. So,
Okay.
um, so working with Concord, I was the person that used to interview the people that came in with the vouchers. So I had
Hmm.
a better understanding of what the qualifications were, what paperwork is required to be able to streamline their applications and get them moved in as quickly as possible. So
Perfect. And so you said you worked at the wait list. Um, and during the time, during your experience and the jobs that you've held, did you have to do any type of certifications or have you completed any HUD certifications?
no, actually, as far as professional certifications, no, but I
Mhm.
always wanted to do the certificate of occupancy and all of those certifications, but I never really had to.
Okay,
So I did
perfect.
all their internal training, which
Okay.
qualified me to be able to, yeah, it was part of the requirements with each company, but I did not do it as a professional certification.
Okay. Now, should an opportunity be presented to you um, to do an assignment with an organization that requires those certifications, is that something that you would be willing to do? Now, certainly, if a job was asking you to become certified on something, that wouldn't be something you would be financially responsible for. But if it was a class that you were asked to take and to gain that certification, is that something you would have interest in?
Without a doubt, I would, yes. And also I
Okay.
would like to get my notary. I know that's important in that role. I've never actually
Mhm.
gone through getting it, and I know that it's a very valuable tool to have in that environment.
Yes, absolutely. I actually had my notary. It's a pretty easy process, lots of paperwork, but
It is.
um, yeah, that one's not too hard to do. So then, what about your computer proficiencies? What softwares are you up to date with that
Well,
you
I
use
typically,
regularly?
I, okay. So typically I end up being like the house expert on most of it. So I used to teach all of the Microsoft products. So,
Oh,
I was actually on the volunteer list before COVID to teach out at the First Step Shelter, to be able to teach some of those folks on how to be resourceful on the internet, what have you. So, um, social media wise, I'm not as astute as I am in Microsoft Word,
hmm
PowerPoint, Excel. I did Microsoft Project at one point. I did Visio. So
hmm
a good bit of the programs out there, Microsoft Outlook, of course. So
hmm
Google
have
Docs.
you? Oh, Google Docs, perfect. Have
Yes.
you ever worked with Yardi, the property
Oh,
management system?
absolutely. Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
That's all I
About how
worked
many
on
years?
at,
Oh,
oh, okay. About 5 years in,
5 years?
yes. And then I did one site for a little over, it was about a year and a half. I worked in
Yeah.
one site.
Okay. And you were going to say something, and I do apologize because I think I
Oh,
stopped
that's
you.
quite all right.
You were saying about the Yardi. It was primarily what you used,
Oh, 5 years, 5.5 years at Concord was all Yardi.
Concord. Okay,
And then
wonderful.
the other stuff was done on one site.
Okay. So I want to shift now that we've talked about technical stuff. I want to shift a little bit to some like conflict resolution. So we all know that as much as we wish every day that we wake up it's going to be a great day with all great interactions with people. Most days it probably is, but there are going to be some days that might not be. So if you were to have a challenging resident, let's say, come in that was having an issue, how would you handle that?
Um, well, it's something I used to excel at. So, um, more often than not, I try to find out what the real problem is. So a lot of times when someone would come into my office and they're all like upset, I let them talk it out because eventually you'll get to what's really bothering them. It's sometimes not the first thing they complained about. So I try to get to the bottom of it. I show them respect and be able to let them know that I'm listening. So I'm an active listener, repeat back to them what I've heard, clarify what it is that they're telling me, and then work toward a solution. So I tend not to be a person that sits in a problem. I like to look for the solution and let them know that that's my goal. Because I know that many times in that particular role, a lot of people want to go back to 10 years ago when they had this problem and they start taking it back. And it's like, yes, you remember I had this problem with this resident and they did this. It's like, okay, but what do we have to do about it now? So I try to keep it focused to make sure that they know that I'm trying to solve their problem today and not 10 years ago,
Mhm.
and that the past doesn't dictate the present, and that I'm here to answer their questions and find solutions. I also reiterate the fact that, I try to draw the boundary about being able to take action means that somebody had to break a rule or a law. Otherwise, I really can't get a lot involved in the he said, she said. And I think that drawing those boundaries with people allows them to understand how I answer their questions or offer them an answer to their problem.
Well, Mary, I think that in all the interviews that I have ever done, I think that you have answered that the best that I have ever heard, because
Oh,
I really, really appreciate the fact that you brought up something very valuable, that you want to be solving the problem right now, but you want to listen, of course, to what they had to say. I really liked that, but not bringing up, I've had this problem before. No, let's bring it back in to what we've got right now. So I really like that answer. Great, great, great answer.
thank you.
um you're welcome. So, of course, I actually worked in property management years ago. So I do understand how multitasking is, whenever I think of property management, that's the one word that comes to my mind. So tell me a little bit about maybe a time that you've had to multitask a project and how you do that successfully. I'm eager to hear your answer.
Well, it depends on what it is. So, yeah, I mean, property management, I think, is built on distractions. So, no matter how much, but sometimes depending on what it is, the project at hand, I have to sometimes compartmentalize myself and be able to draw that boundary and set expectations for people that need my time. Obviously, emergencies have to take priority. But if I'm like, for instance, I'll give you a clear example. If I'm working on money, I don't allow distractions. If I'm posting money or if I'm working on ledgers, I have to, shut my door. I can't be bothered for the next hour. Anybody that asks me, make sure that you have good, clear information and get back to them. So multitasking that way, when it has to do with money, I always put money first. And then, of
Okay.
course, anything else, I have to be able to prioritize it. So once again, you have to get to the bottom of what it is that's really going on. Make sure that and I set clear expectations. I probably won't be able to get back to you until later on today, but tell me what it is that's going on so I know how to better prioritize your issue. And that's how I do that. If I have an appointment and you're on my calendar, I respect you on my calendar and I let them know that. Because if
Hmm.
someone walks in and wants my attention over something that just came up, I'll have to say, I'm sorry, but this person is on my calendar, but I'm happy to put you on my calendar. And I will
Hmm.
give you the same time and attention when you're on my calendar. And that way it's kind of like being able to own my space and own my own time. So
Absolutely. Again, almost
controlled
perfectly
multitasking.
answered. Yes, I love that. Well, we have talked about it so much so far, and this was just going to be a little clip. So I'm going to stop the clip part of
Okay.
the interview, but don't hang up though, because we've got a bunch more questions and things to
Sure.
chat about. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. Okay, but don't go anywhere.